is Monday. I just got back from Ottawa, second weekend in a row in Ottawa. There's so much going on over there. There's so much in the media that is also a lie and propaganda. But overall, the event was amazing. It was a really good time. I think there was even more people there. There was definitely more people at night. But I think there was more people on Saturday. This is despite them shutting down hotels and not letting people book it, and just coming up with all these different stories about why they couldn't open. So they made it really, really hard for people to get there. They are preventing the truckers from getting gas. So there's some great Instagram accounts. If you go to my Telegram, you'll find them there. I highly recommend going on Telegram and finding the Truckers Convoy. But there's a couple Instagram accounts, POC Truckers Convoy and Trucker Convoy 2022. I can link those up in the description as well. But those Instagram accounts are doing phenomenal coverage of what's going on. They deleted they're freezing the accounts at GoFundMe. So people are saying rather than doing a refund, do a chargeback because it'll charge them $15 for GoFundMe and give them a terrible review. So all this stuff is happening. This is a war. World War III is a psychological war. And Canada has just put itself on the map for a major resistance that is kind of going worldwide. A peaceful way to stop this agenda of what's unfolding. And that's what we're looking for. All the people who know what's going on would like a peaceful way to stop these mandates, stop this agenda on our children, to stop the digital identity, certificate, all the stuff that we know that's coming from their own literature. This is an opinion. I got a great visit with my uncle the other day, and the people who are on the sidelines or will just go line up and take the needle, they don't know anything. They don't want to know. They can't understand why people would do something harmful, how people would lie on a mass level because they're good people. They can't understand how people would think that way, but that's just the case. So the vibe down there was amazing. Again, it's like Canada Day celebration. They planned a counter protest, which is so absurd. So only a few people came up, and you see videos of these people and they're really lost, you know what I mean? They're wearing like a gas mask, and he's got like a bat with 3 masks on the bat, you know what I mean? So these people are really mentally lost. They're very disconnected from reality and what is actually happening. So, but because there's so many people there, they're so happy, they're smiling, it's really hard to kind of yell at someone who's smiling, So all the propaganda about Ottawa saying that, people can't sleep and all that, maybe in a very small section, because the noise is really concentrated on a very, very small section, and you can still drive around. I drove when I left right down in the middle of it, so they really know what they're doing. But one of the truckers told me that, one of the guys almost froze to death because he couldn't get gasoline. And there's children there. Some of these truckers came with their children and their families and little ones. I saw babies, So there's babies there. So this is serious, and this is a war crime. I posted on my Telegram of one of the I can't remember who it was. Somebody in the States just listed which of the war crimes, because, we have a right to peaceful assembly and to peaceful protest, and what they're doing is preventing gas, and then this could actually kill them because it's so crazy cold. If they don't have fuel, they can't start their truck, which means they can't have heat, right? So this is one of the tactics by the police. So they're overstepping their bounds. And in Canada, we might be getting the notice that we've already become a communist country, and it's just rolling out. So will the people be able to stand up to the corruption? I saw another research post. I haven't verified it. It was from Awake Canada, where they found out the Ottawa police chief was connected to some sort of globalist, like the World Economic Forum or something like that. Like, all these peoples in high position are usually connected in some sort of way to roll out this agenda. And then everyday people, like these police officers and other people, they enforce it. So, regular people have to stop enforcing these mandates, these things that they know are wrong. So we've got one of Trudeau's snipers who quit because he's like, enough of this. That's what we need. We need people to stop. But then you've got the Ottawa police who are quote unquote just doing their job and oppressing other people. You need to rethink your career when you're doing harmful things. You can't justify that because you gotta, make ends meet. You gotta figure something else out. You know what I mean? That's what you have to do, or you're gonna be on the wrong side of history, which is what all these people are on. So, and you can see with this trucker convoy, they deleted the GoFundMe, then they put up GoSendMe, and it's already up to $3 million, I think, US. So people really are supporting this. At the event, there was even more families. There was even bouncy castles. Every corner was singing and dancing and hugging and high-fiving and incredibly peaceful. Even more food this time. Some guy made me just an absolutely delicious pizza. That was so good. They had a wood fire pizza going, like a hot stove pizzas like set up. It was the quality of food was phenomenal. And it was all free. So, kids everywhere. The cops were good during the day, but this drive's got these dead spots. So they were well organized. The dance party went into the night. Police were peaceful then, but then they do the tyrannical things during the week when less people are around, right? So they have more or whatever. So this is something that I believe people should pay attention to around the world, because it is sparking this resistance, and people are seeing that those who want freedom of choice are not the minority. If you want to take it or not take it, that's not the point. It's much worse than that. This agenda goes much worse than whether you're going to take a needle or not, depending on, what you believe about what's in that shot, because that can be pretty brutal too. But, even if you're for that, most people aren't for segregation and taking away people's freedoms. And this isn't the majority, this is the minority of people. So that's why you're seeing no, momentum on the other side. All it is mainstream lies, propaganda, and now we're seeing tyrannical government overreach in Canada, like we live in China or something like that. And this is the important thing of the United States, to observe this, because you have a strong constitution and you have the Second Amendment. The United States people can protect themselves from enemies, both foreign and domestic. And what's happened is the people to administer our property and our rights, and what they're doing is they're trying to usurp all that and basically put us into mass slavery for basically ever. So this is what this is standing up for. So the event was amazing. At night there was even more people. The party was super nuts, and we need to pay attention to what's happening on basically an hour or daily basis and see how we can contribute in some sort of way by sharing the truth, by not complying in your neighborhood, by holding people accountable. There's a lot of these, the Ottawa police, they're all public, right? We have their emails, so we can get their emails and email them. But now is the time for action, especially if you're a Canadian. Now it's time for action. And around the world, I think Finland had a massive peaceful protest as well, and if we can peacefully not comply, that would be amazing. And what's nice about this truckers thing is, again, it could be all kinds of people there, but the fact that it's trucks and it creates a nuisance, they have to kind of pay attention to it. And so it's our government is a joke, right? We don't even have our prime minister is not even around, but many people knew he was a globalist puppet from the beginning. And again, we might be getting the notice. So this isn't going to be solved by the government. This is going to be solved by the people not complying and uniting. And there's just so many beautiful things. And one of the things for me as a Canadian that kind of teared up a couple times when it really hit me and I realized it, because I kept hearing it over and over. In Quebec, when I was having this great conversation with this man who was there his buddy was there all week, sleeping in his van, serving up food to the truckers, using his own money, supporting them in great spirits after being there for, over a week in the cold. And we're talking about Quebec, and he said, Quebec, they really indoctrinate you to say, like, Quebec is different. Quebec is, not like the rest of Canada. We're our own thing, and it's, and then kind of like screw the rest of Canada a little bit, which, as somebody who's, my dad is French Canadian, but, I didn't grow up in French Canada, so that always bugged me. You know what I mean? Screw you. Like, why don't you want to be a part of this country? And I've always liked our Quebec heritage. One, because I have a part of that in my family. And two, it's cool to have this very unique culture within your country. 2 languages, in your country, and like it's a rich history that's there. I've always been very proud of Quebec. So when they want to separate and do their own thing, I understand it in one way because it is very different. But it also bugs me in another way because it's a very unique and wonderful part of Canada, and it makes us very special to have that part. And so what these guys were telling me is I can't remember what the words were, but they were basically saying like, I'm proud to be Canadian. They're holding Canada flags for the first time. A lot of Quebecers, they'll have the Quebec flag, but they won't have the Canada flag. And you saw so many Quebec flags with the Canada flag together, and so many people from Montreal and Quebec just saying, for the first time ever, I'm proud to be Canadian. And it made a lot of people really emotional. So this is a very uniting experience for Canada to see what we're made of. And all they have as a weapon is couch potatoes, tweetering that everything is racist. And I know these people personally, they don't do anything and they don't know much, so that's all they can do is complain, but they have no spirit, they have no real world energy, they have very low real world value, because they just work for the machine and they want to protect the machine. And it's exactly like in the Matrix, you know what I mean? Most people don't want to be unplugged. They'll fight to protect the system that they're in. And so what we're seeing is good, strong people with souls who want freedom for themselves, for their families, for their kids, and for their grandkids, willing to fight for this. And that means to show up and do what they can and get truth out. And what this is sparking is conversation, but it's also creating these other courage. One of the times I liked was courage is contagious, right? When I was in the grocery store, I wasn't wearing a mask, and I haven't worn a mask basically in 2 years. Once I had to go into freaking Costco. And then actually I had an incident at the hotel where I was telling him, like, the guy just took the rules in his own hand, and he's like, you have to wear one, you have to wear it. I said, no. I said, look at the sign, I don't have to wear one. He goes, where's your exemption? I was like, I don't have to provide you an exemption. It's right here on your sign. It's like, we're not doing that this weekend. And so I would have just gone somewhere else, but there was nowhere else to go, and I had my 2-year-old daughter, so I was forced. So I put it under, I was really pissed off, you know what I mean? So I put it on for a second, and then, just to get to my room, because if they canceled it, I don't know what we would have done. So anyway, to not wear your mask in public, I've had 2 people take it off, and recently it was the third person. She goes, you didn't say anything when you didn't have a mask? I was like, no. And if they do, it's a child or a person, you just tell them you're exempt, and that's it, because that's what the rule is. And so, your courage is contagious, and you're seeing kids in school stand up. We know the difference between right and wrong, and all the other side has is guilt and shame and name calling. And yeah, it feels ugly when someone calls you a racist and all these different things, but it's not true. This is like dealing with adolescent crybabies. And that's all they are. They're complainers, but they get you with that, emotional shame and guilt, right? Which is untrue. So that's all really the battle we need to go through. And you're seeing the overwhelming support for this movement around Canada. There was protests in all the major cities. Victoria came out. Toronto had a big one. Winnipeg. Sarnia is going to close down a border. So like this is serious stuff, and the world's watching. And now the world is watching the Ottawa police and the Canadian police say, hey, what level of tyranny is Canada at? And so at least it gives us that notice of where we stand as Canadian citizens of this country. How far will they go? Where are we? We need to know. And so standing up for our basic rights, like, freedom of speech, basic right. Freedom of medical, choice is a basic right, but it's being taken away. And so we've had that notice for a while, and, people are sick of it. So we need to know how far that these guys are going to go. So it was good, super tiring. I did so much walking. I wish I had one of those Fitbits to see how many kilometers I walked, because I had to drive back from the hotel each time. It was a much more pain in the bum, especially with a little one. But yeah, they had bouncy castles. It was a great event. It was invigorating for the soul. And so my suggestion is for people to pay attention to this, to these trucker accounts, because we all need to know where we stand, and we all need to be now coming together with these solutions. And now you're seeing all these other people and organizations stand up, and say, hey, believe whatever you want, but we're going to put this out. We're going to put this email out that we stand with the truckers. We're going to put this email out that we stand for peace and freedom of choice. And if you don't stand for that and you want to call me a racist for it, you are welcome to, and that's it. All they have, is optics. It was so peaceful, and that's why they didn't have the counter protest, because they were massively, massively outnumbered. All they can do is come and be grumpy, and, which they're welcome to. Just that. And it's really hard to pick a fight with somebody who's dancing, singing, and smiling. So I'm very confident in this, and I think it's required that we, take action, because the world is watching, which is amazing. And we have our American, brothers and sisters over there, responding to this, seeing what's going on, and this is a worldwide agenda. So if we can nip it in the butt now, that's amazing. But eventually they have to dismantle the United States because of that Second Amendment. That Second Amendment really changes the game, because even if you have a corrupt government, which Canada does and the United States does, and they can implement these policies, well, if every single household has a weapon and they can defend themselves and they can defend their family, even you just tell people to go take their stuff, they can defend themselves. And so that's obviously an issue, and that's why they disarm countries. And you can look at history, when the governments disarmed their people, shortly after, very often there was a genocide by the government where they shot them. And you can look that up and find a few different incidents of that occurring. So I'm very optimistic. My suggestion to people is support how you can. Like I said, just standing up. If your kid's in school, you can get the mask off them. Don't allow them to put a mask on your child in school. You can go to the principal and fight for your kid. Say, my kid's exempt. They're not putting on a mask. This is wrong. And even furthermore, my suggestion is, if your kid's in public school, get them out of public school. You should see our Waterloo region where I am, and around the world. Like, whenever you see it, it's everywhere. This agenda. And in the last year and 2 years, they've ramped up like crazy, on all this nonsense that they're putting in schools, and really frigging the kids up, even to the point beyond some of the other stuff, but wearing a mask and telling them not to look at each other when they're talking. This is going to be a lot of psychological damage that's going to take them a while to heal from. And if you're putting your kid in school, it's not the government doing it, it's you. You have a choice. You have to figure out something, right, to respond to that situation. Take them out of school, put them in something else, put them in a different school, fight for them not wearing a mask, whatever you got to do, invest in some stuff and get to a private school. I know some schools that, the cost in Canada, and I think there's a lot of expensive ones, but there's a lot of schools that aren't that expensive that you can put your kids in that don't mask, right? So you need to find those solutions, because, I spilled so much coffee. Excuse me. Let me take a sip of coffee here. Anybody have any questions? Yeah, they got to do it though. And we got to go to self-sustainability, growing our own food. Any of these rabbit holes you go down, it's crazy how corrupt it is. And so, we really need to protect our kids, because the scarring is going to be harder for them. Rather them have no propaganda and scarring and no education than scarring them, because it's going to be very hard. It's a lot harder to take out the programming for a young mind. I think it's an Aristotle quote that says, "Give me the boy until he's 7 and I'll show you the man." And it's very, very important that we blessings from the church. Amazing. Put in a good Bible quote. I've been going through the Bible really intensely lately, and it's crazy. That book really is an amazing book. The quotes have been very helpful for me, and just talking about being in war and all these different things that we're experiencing now seems to be very, very accurate. So let me see if I can go to the chat. Yeah, so I want to do more lives. It's hard to get the word out because all my stuff is being censored like crazy. It's a battle where I am, and the podcast and the work that I do is like basically volunteer service. And you see all these people. So you don't have gun rights. We're able to get guns, but not in the same way like the Americans have. So we're more restricted, right? You have to have restricted for a handgun. The bullets are different. You guys can, somebody from Ohio was telling me that their neighbor had a Gatling gun, and you can buy grenades. That's insane. Here, we can't have like these full military weapons, right? They're kind of, I can't remember exactly what they are, but we can't have like full on automatic. That's illegal. So you just have, so that's why Canada is further along than Australia, because we do have arms and we do have a lot of hunters, and we could protect ourselves if we needed to. But you don't want to go to war with Rome, because they've got all of the weapons. I think that it says go to peace in the Bible. And this is why understanding the law is really interesting, because when I study the law, it's actually spiritual. It's God's law. It's not man-made acts and statutes and all this nonsense. All of that has nothing to do with a living, breathing man, under the stars, right? And so they just trick you into their deceptive system. And so, apparently the 1611 King James Bible is the contract on the planet, because the Queen swears her oath on that to uphold that book, and she basically still runs the show. So that's what the experts in the law summit were telling me, and with having success in the courts and understanding that. And what they kept coming back to is, you need to understand that you're a free being, that anything that you get into is commerce or a contract. And so it's really interesting. So I'm in Texas. If I had a permit, I could go buy. Seriously. Oh God! Somebody just said they could go buy dynamite in Texas legally. That's so freaking funny. Yeah, I was talking to my buddy Mike Bledsoe once about things, because Canada's been brutal the last 2 years, just full-on communist country. And I was like, are you optimistic the way things are going? Because I'm not, man. Like, it's just been brutal. I'm more optimistic now. When we were chatting, I wasn't very optimistic. And he goes, I'm in Texas, and I was just shooting the craziest guns ever. I'm around a bunch of other people shooting the craziest guns ever. So yeah, bro, I feel hyped up and optimistic. But if I was in San Francisco, where I got to go next weekend, I was living there, I wouldn't be feeling too good. So the huge opportunity this is showing is the kind of people that you want to be around. It's already separated those types of people, and we'll know from how people, when we get through this scenario, we'll know the type of people we're dealing with how they dealt with this, right? They're like, oh yeah, I just complied and I did what I was supposed to, and I got the shots and I did all that kind of stuff. And like, okay, cool. You're probably someone that I don't want to associate with, because you don't think for yourself. You don't think about your fellow man and woman. You're not somebody who is going to help me if I need it. You're just going to do whatever the government tells you, or you're an order follower. And then on the other side, you have really strong people with strong spiritual convictions and the difference between right and wrong, and they're harder to be manipulated, and they don't want to harm anyone else, but they're not going to be, it's not as bad, but it's kind of as bad to like stick your head in the sand and, just go along and try to miss everything, when it's not, everybody's got their own choice, but especially when you got these, families out there and these kids, there's a lot on the line here, like the harm for these kids is real. We don't know what's in these shots and how bad they are, but we already know we're losing our young kids. We already know that we have studies coming back that are showing a massive increase in stillbirths, or is that what it's called? In hospitals. And I've watched some whistleblowers, and at the protest, there was doctors and there was nurses. The one nurse I spoke to, she said, where she was, like 50 people got fired for these, things. So who are these nurses, right? And what are they doing now? The ones that are just staying and doing whatever they're told. But now we have this alternative community that's going to stand up for what's right, and that's what we're going to build the future with, and that's where things get very, very exciting. So this thing is gone global. It's worldwide. I did one video on, people are pretty convinced it's a psyop, right? And so I had to look at that. I look at everything, and from being there 2 weekends in a row, I absolutely do not think that or believe that, because of the spirit of the people. They can't control this. They're going to respond. And again, it's like a chess match. It's a war, right? And if you study war, or you read, Sun Tzu's book, The Art of War, anything about combat and things like that, there are all these moves that you want to do. So they're going to respond, and they're responding now. And it's very hard. And that's why it's important to stay peaceful as long as possible, because once the memo gets out there that peace was held, and they just basically overstepped massively, people will know where they stand. They'll know where they stand in Canada, and they'll know where they stand in the United States. And once that memo gets put out there, these people are going to run away, because there's way more of us than them. So the last thing they want to do is show the world that, hey, we're just going to enforce this no matter what, because they do not have enough people and guns to go against every single person in every single country. And then the good men and women that are standing up are will show those people in uniforms. So a lot of them have lost their soul and their lost causes, but a lot of them are on the fence, and a lot of them are just, they're not getting clued into how bad it is yet. They're not getting clued into what this agenda is. So when they really see this force, and their soul's going to be stirred, and they're going to ask questions. Now they see more stuff online and the truth coming out, and it's so hard to ignore the truth. And all they have on Twitter and these social media and mainstream media is just to promote propaganda and SOS and all that different stuff. But then you see the other side, and you know that they're lying. I think I was telling you earlier, there's Trudeau's sniper. one of the snipers that worked for Trudeau, he quit, and now he's part of the convoy team. You have Dr. Roger Hodgkinson, Dr. Roger Hodgkinson. That's how I'm saying it now. Hodgkinson. I'm so tired. I've been doing so much driving and. But yeah, you've got this amazing team of people now uniting around this and saying this is about freedom. This is about freedom. That's what we're standing up for. And there's already been enough harm done. There's been, in my opinion, way too much harm done. And I figured it would get this far, and my optimistic point of view was this winter was going to be the worst. And then by spring, and this before spring, we had a powerful response from the people. So this is amazing. Yeah, this consent, and they're supposed to give consent, or it's supposed to be informed consent, right? And people aren't getting that. And every time I talk to somebody on the other side, they don't know anything about anything, always, right? They just listen to the news. Like, even, it was just frustrating. My dad got the memo the other day. He's chatting, and he's saying he was very upset that he was listening to CBC, and I can't remember what word he used, but he's just like, I was so sad that the news is, I can't trust it. I was like, I've been telling you that for 20 years. I said, stop listening to the news. And he finally, after all this time, is just going to drop, I hope anyway, so you got to drop it. But that's where it's challenging for the older generation, like my dad, because, these Instagram accounts, they don't even have Instagram. They don't have all these things, right? They get dropped. And then you got to go search around and refine people who are posting the truth and navigate through Telegram and do all these different things to really, really search for the truth, because it's not on the mainstream, right? It's very challenging to find. Even Google, right? You have to use DuckDuckGo now because Google's so corrupt. So the positive thing is that these guys keep getting supported, and they're in the front lines. And so if you're in Canada, don't listen to the fear tactics. If they give you a ticket for bringing in a gas can, that's what they're doing now. Just take a ticket. It's not going to be expensive, and you can fight it in court and get every single person to get a ticket to fight in court and bung it up, and they'll get thrown out. It's just scare tactics. Worst case scenario, you might have to pay a ticket. Very worst. It might be $60, $120, whatever. It's nothing. That's all they have, because it's completely unlawful. But that's the challenge, right? This is showing up. It's not that easy. When they canceled the hotel, I didn't think, oh, I'm not going to go now. I was like, what am I going to have to do to get there? Because they're going to make it uncomfortable. They're going to make it challenging. That's what war and psychological operations are. But as far as war goes, it's like we were talking to some of the guys out there, and it's like kind of the easiest war ever. We got to show up, we got to be around good people, we got to get yelled at a little bit, and got to be cold, right? Got to dance in the cold. Then a lot of guys coming to support, right? Just coming up to dance in the cold and be there in person. It's so important to be there in person, right? The first week, the fringe minority, right? It's so hilarious now. We have so many jokes to go on that. And you see how peaceful and all the smiles, they just can't hide it. It's just overwhelming deceit, and it's only going to fool the fooled. So showing up, whether you bring something or you don't, is 99% of it, right? And so we're seeing massive support for these people on every organization. We see the corruption come up with GoFundMe and the Ottawa police, and now I saw the link that the Ottawa police connect to the the globalists somehow, right? And every time they do something, they're like, okay, it comes out, right? It'll all come out in the wash, because people are watching. And that's what we need: people watching, paying attention, holding their public representatives accountable for what they're doing. And we can't be asleep at the wheel, because they're going to try everything they can to totally. But some of the so-called normies are honestly totally believing. Yeah, so and they're allowed to do that. So people can believe whatever the heck they want to believe, right? There's still a lot of them, but they don't have a solid understanding. Like the people who believe this stuff, they're believing in a lie, and they can be educated because there's a truth and there's opinion, right? When I was talking to my Uncle Mark, I was like, well, there's a truth and an opinion. I'll tell you which one I'm saying, but the truth is the PCR test is meaningless, because the guy who invented it, Kerry Mullis, said so. As far as figuring out what the cause of disease is, it just amplifies matter. It doesn't tell you why a person got sick. And so that's what this is all on. So there's a truth and an opinion. And so since they're deceived, they don't have the same kind of strength. They don't have the same kind of standing. They don't have any will. I saw an argument. The guy out in the streets, get out of my town. And he goes into this argument. One guy started to talk to him, and confront him. And, the guy was just spitting nonsense. Like, oh, you're the reason we closed down the business. If you guys opened up the business, you would have made so much money. It's your stupid fault for closing the business. The government has closed down business for 2 years. All of their arguments are just ridiculous. So that's it. I'm going to go to the gym. I'm tired, but I got to shower and get clean because, I was just working all weekend, and it was so apologies I couldn't get more footage. I did a couple lives, but my daughter was she didn't do so good. She doesn't like to nap. She likes to nap in her crib, so she was a pain in the bum, and I drive back and forth 1,000 times and walk so much, so I couldn't do the same type of media that I did before, but I was there in person, and it was well organized. So hopefully we do Ottawa round 3, the third wave, keeps showing support and exposing what's going on. And again, this is sparked worldwide, all over Canada, all over the major cities in Canada, even some of the smaller ones. It's got more truckers involved. It's got other things. Right now, you got the Cowboys out in Alberta, right? You got the Cowboys out on horseback. You're in trouble now, right? So there's all these other organizations that are seeing this as like, okay, what else can we do to stop this, right? We have to go all in. So if you're a tradesperson, if you're in an organization, if you're in hunting and fishing and things like that, you have these big organizations, whatever they are. If you're a big organization in sport, now it's time to put out the truth and say, look, this is what I'm fighting for. Take all the nonsense that people are going to give you, but then you're going to find all the real people that want to help and support and do something, and you can unite with them and figure out a solution, because all these naysayers and the ones that'll call you a racist and say, oh, you're an anti-vax, that's all they had. That's it. It's just a little emotional uncomfort for a bit, because they're going to yell at you and call you a bunch of names, but that's it. That's all they have. And then you can unite with the people who are wanting to find a solution for their communities, for the future, for the kids, for all the nonsense that's going on. You're going to find them, and you're going to figure out a way to bung up the system, because tyranny can only go so far, and then the people are going to respond, and that's what we're seeing. And it's a huge opportunity to respond. This is a massive opportunity for all of us to respond in some sort of way. So you'll see, each of us will see our own opportunity to do something. So share as much about the truckers thing as you can. Educate yourself. Be a good member of the community that you're in. I'm gonna do podcasts, I think, here and there. I got a really oh, yo, Ramet, what's up? This is Ramet on here. He's my buddy. Went down to, oh my God, I can't even think about Estonia. And we just crushed it so hard in Estonia. It was the greatest trip of all time. It was the most perfect trip I've ever been on. In Ramet, he picks me up from the airport. He's kind of like my tour guide. And we just had the greatest time. It was just like the flow state trip. That was the most flow state trip I've ever been on in my life. Estonia is a very cool place. Very beautiful, and had a ton of fun. So that was when we lived in a free world, and I hope to go back to that. And before this whole thing, where I started to imagine my life in a different way, I wanted to speak and inspire people, and continue to learn. And so I was like, well, it'd be really cool to go to these cities like Estonia with my buddy Ramet, and get toured around, but then find like the most interesting people and interview them in person, and then also learn about their towns. That'd be a cool show and podcast. And I was starting to imagine how I could make that happen and make a living from doing it, and figure out all that kind of stuff, and speak more, and maybe do retreats and things like that. And then Corona bunged it all up. And so for the people on the sidelines waiting for this to go away, your business and your life is not going to be what you think it is if you don't stand up to this, especially for the kids too. If we don't stop this now, we are going to be in a big issue, if we don't stand up, because we're going to be handing over slavery to our children. We're already doing that in our education. I can't say this strongly enough. If you have a son or a daughter, you need to take them out of school. You need to find alternative education. I can assure you the brainwashing and the propaganda is worse than you think. You have to figure out an alternative education. It is not okay. It is not a safe environment. It is not healthy. It's going to be, it's so damaging. And 1 year of that can just really have a lifetime of damage. So school is awful. And, we need to stop this now, because it's going to get worse. And that's what one of the truckers was saying, is we couldn't wait 6 months. If we waited 6 months, it would be too long. And so you're seeing the character of the people that are out there, and the freaking endless patience that these people have from nonsense. And myself, I'm not a very patient person, to be honest. I'm not. I want things to be done right and quickly. And, when people are intolerant and being just ridiculous, I struggle with patience. I want to smack them upside the head. And I've been able to deal with an extraordinary amount of nonsense. And one of them is just understanding that, the compassionate side is that they're sick. You know what I mean? They're manipulated. They're they have a condition. They literally are mentally sick because they've been brainwashed. And so it's not them, it's like an avatar speaking through them. It's like that's the virus. It's this virus speaking through them. It's not their soul. They don't have any will. They're not really a threat. They're not a threat one-on-one, but they are dangerous, and people need to understand that. We had the incident in Winnipeg where these people drove through a crowd and hit 4 people. So some of these people are deranged because they're taking the propaganda and they're so far removed from reality. So we need to be aware of that. And I've seen other stories where they find out, like one was a nurse, and she found out if you're a Trump supporter, she would mess up, like, I don't know, say like something serious, like it was like cancer, tell them that they had it, they didn't, or something like that. It was like something horrible. And you see these chats from these people, and we're not a part of those chats, you and I, because we've already ousted ourselves, so we don't know what kind of horrible things that they're thinking of, but they do think of this. So it's just important to be aware of how these people are operating in the propaganda. And that's what they did for the Rwanda genocide, right? They gave radios to one side, and they just kept doing propaganda over and over, dehumanizing the other side, and then eventually dropped the machetes and they went over and killed them. So that was a slow roll. So we just need to be aware of these people. They're violent, right? And so the second that if they do make that move, we'll be able to obviously defend ourselves, but it's something that needs to be addressed. I guess I don't know how to say it very well yet, obviously, from this yammering, but it's uncomfortable, right? And when I was talking to my uncle, it's like, well, if you don't know the truth, right, if you don't know there's a threat, then you can get harmed. And that's what we need to kind of grow up to, is these institutions and these things that we thought were for our benefit are actually threats. And once we know that, then we can build something beautiful together with communities. And that's what's going to be asked of us, to let go of things that don't serve us, to not do things that are wrong, which obviously people are doing, to stop comply, with anything. It's, just think a simple thing. Wearing a mask is complying. Don't do that. Have a little bit of courage, because that's promoting that. The more people take off their masks every time, the more other people are going to take off their masks, because it's wrong. There's no evidence, for any of this stuff that's happening. We know that there's countries in the world that have been open the whole time. There's states in the United States that